After you download your fingerprint, the first thing you're going to want to do is change the file name. Go File, Save As, and put your first initial and last name and the period number and save it on the desktop. Next, you're going to add another layer by coming down here to the bottom of the layer menu and clicking Create a New Layer. Click on the color chip on the top and select a bright color. Click on the paintbrush and then come up here to this dialog box and make sure to select a hard edged paintbrush. And then you're simply going to go over all of your fingerprint. Remember, you can do Command plus to zoom in. If your paintbrush is too large, you can see from here that it's wider than this print. You can bring the size down by tapping on the bracket key, which is next to the letter P on your keyboard, and getting it down to the correct size, or to a manageable size. You're not going to be so concerned with super accuracy here, but try and cover up all of the areas and take note of where they overlap and where they join. This needs to be pretty dense, so we're going to beef it up a little bit later in the next procedure. But the first things first, go over the entire thing, over every print. The reason it's not critical that it be exact is that you don't necessarily want people having your fingerprint, although it is useful for a lot of things. This is just an art project, and your finished product is going to be your portrait inside your fingerprints, like the sample I showed you the other day in class. So go over the entire thing and then save your document. Remember that after you add a layer, this is now changed from a JPEG into a Photoshop document. So I'm going to hold my thumb on the Command key and tap the letter S, and it's going to automatically change this to PSD. Once again, put it on your desktop and save it. I've already done one of these, so I'm going to switch over to that one to show you what the next step is. So here's a student's photo. We'll worry about that part later. Here's the fingerprint. And here's the overlapped in red print that I painted over. Command 0 gives me a larger image. I'm going to turn this one off. If you'll notice, I've also added some effects on here. I'm going to double click this so that you can see what I've done. I've added a stroke of 6 points around this image. Let me take it off so that you can see what the difference is. If you notice, there's a lot more white space in here. When we apply the mask, we want to see more of the face of the portrait. So I'm double clicking again on the layer, and I'm going to bring the stroke back up to 6 points, and watch what happens on the left over here when I bring this back up to 6. Notice how the white space starts filling in? I'm going to add 8 this time just to see what the difference is. Click OK. Now, in order to put this photo inside this print, I'm going to go up to the Select menu at the top and choose Color Range. Then I'm going to click on the white background, which is going to give me, it's actually selecting everything around it. You could also click on the red area, which will actually be a little bit better in some cases. It just depends on how fuzzy this is. Click OK, and it's now selected that print. So now I can turn this layer off. And then click on the top layer where the photo is. You're going to take your own photo. I just took this one off of the PowerSchool for the example. Once you've got this image selected, go down to the bottom of the layer palette, and click on Add Layer Mask. And if you notice, it put all of that information inside the print. If there's details on here that you would rather have, like maybe right where the eye is, you can always go in, click on the layer mask, click the eraser tool, zoom in a little bit, and I just tapped Command plus on the keyboard, and you can go in and add to some of the details in here, because it's really not going to take away from the fingerprint itself, and we're not as concerned about the fingerprint itself as we are of the details of the face. I'm hitting Command 0. I'm going to save it again, Command S. One thing that you'll note here is that the print goes right up to the edge of the page. So I'm going to go to Image, Canvas Size. I'm just going to leave everything alone here, but I'm going to add an inch to the height by just changing this to 40. You might have to play with that a couple of times. Canvas size, let's make this 44. Let's make the width 24 and click OK. In order for this to work, you can see all these check boxes back here. I'm going to go down to the bottom layer. It's white here. I'm going to hold the Command key down and tap the 0. Excuse me. The delete key. So Command delete will now fill in all that area with black. It's still cut off down here at the bottom a little bit, but I'm not so concerned about that. So save your file, Command S. And then for the final, you're going to do File, Save As. Change it back to a JPEG. So you're going to end up with 2 files here. Most of the time, this will add the word copy. So we're just going to delete the word copy here. And I'm going to change this to my sample. And notice that I changed the name of it also. It now says fprintpic _ first initial last name _ your period number .psd. Since I've changed this to a JPEG, notice how it said PSD before? Change the format to JPEG and it should automatically change this. Click on the desktop and save it. And click OK. The reason we're doing it that way is because if you notice down here at the bottom, this is a 15 megabyte file. In Photoshop, it's a 64 megabyte file. Watch what happens to the difference over here when I flatten all of these layers. It's still a 15 megabyte file here, but it's only 30 megabytes now because it's a JPEG instead of a Photoshop file. You don't have to concern yourself with those details, but this is the one that you're going to turn into Google Classroom.